My sister looked me up and down at our father's funeral, scoffed at my thrifted wool coat, and whispered, "Don't embarrass me at the charity gala next week. Actually, just don't come. You're far too poor for this crowd." She had absolutely no idea the venue for her little high society event was legally mine. If you want to understand how a family fractures, you have to look at the money. In the Caldwell household, money wasn't just currency, it was oxygen, and my older sister Victoria was the only one allowed to breathe. Growing up, Victoria was the undisputed golden child. She had the glossy blonde hair, the pageant-ready smile, and a relentless hunger for high society that our father, a moderately successful corporate consultant, happily fed. While she was gifted a brand new BMW for her 16th birthday and paraded through country club cotillions, I was the quiet, introverted younger sister who spent her weekends building servers in the basement. I was the ghost of the Caldwell house. To Victoria, I wasn't just a sibling. I was a tragic, unfashionable accessory she had to apologize for. The divide only widened as we entered adulthood. Victoria made a career out of being seen. She became a prominent philanthropist in Chicago, which is essentially code for throwing lavish parties using other people's money to elevate her own social standing. Her crowning achievement was securing an engagement to Preston Harrington. The Harringtons were old money, the kind of family that had their names engraved on park benches and library wings. Preston was arrogant, wore too much cologne, and looked at me like I was something he'd scraped off his custom Italian loafers. But to Victoria, he was the ultimate prize, a permanent VIP pass to the elite world she so desperately craved. Everything came to a head when our father passed away unexpectedly last month. The reading of the will took place in the mahogany-paneled office of Arthur Pendleton, our family lawyer. Victoria sat beside Preston, wearing a black designer morning dress that probably cost more than my car, dabbing at her dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. I sat in the corner, wearing a simple black turtleneck. Arthur cleared his throat and delivered the bomb. Our father was broke. Worse than broke, actually. He had spent the last 5 years taking out massive loans to fund Victoria's lifestyle and keep up appearances. The estate was completely underwater. Victoria was left the family home, which carried a second mortgage she couldn't afford, and I was left a vintage gold pocket watch that had belonged to our grandfather. "This is absurd!" Victoria had shrieked, slamming her manicured hands on Arthur's desk. "Where are the liquid assets? The offshore accounts?" "Preston's family is expecting a substantial dowry contribution for the wedding." "I'm sorry, Victoria," Arthur said gently. "Your father lived well beyond his means. The house is all that's left, and the bank will be calling about the mortgage by the end of the month." Preston had visibly stiffened beside her, his jaw clenching. I could see the panic in Victoria's eyes. If Preston's family found out she was suddenly destitute, the engagement would be off before the ink dried on the obituary. She needed a distraction. She needed a triumph. That triumph was supposed to be the Harrington Foundation's annual Winter Gala, an event Victoria had spent the last 8 months planning. It was the social event of the season, a multi-million-dollar fundraiser designed to cement her status as the future Mrs. Preston Harrington. 2 days after the funeral, I was packing up some of my books from the family library when Victoria marched in. The stress of the hidden bankruptcy was already carving harsh lines around her mouth. "I need to talk to you about the gala on Saturday," she said, crossing her arms. "I've already bought a dress," I replied mildly, not looking up from my cardboard box. "It's a quiet black slip dress, nothing flashy." Victoria let out a sharp, cruel laugh. "Celia, please, a slip dress? From where, Macy's?" "Look, I'm going to be brutally honest with you because someone has to be. You can't come." I stopped packing and finally looked at her. "It's a charity event, Victoria. Dad just died. I thought we could go together." "And have you standing next to me looking like a charity case yourself?" she sneered, stepping closer. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Preston's parents are flying in from London. The mayor is going to be there. The board of the Harrington Foundation is evaluating me. I am hanging on to this engagement by a thread right now, and I cannot have my dowdy, perpetually broke little sister ruining my aesthetic. You don't fit the tax bracket, Celia. You never have." She reached into her designer handbag, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and tossed it onto the stack of books. It fluttered down like a dead leaf. "Order some takeout. Watch a movie. Do whatever it is you do. Victoria said, turning on her heel. But stay far away from the Obsidian Plaza on Saturday night. If I see you anywhere near those doors, I will have security physically throw you out. She walked out, the click-clack of her heels echoing down the hallway. I looked down at the $100 bill. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. Instead, a slow, cold smile spread across my face. Because Victoria was right about one thing. She had no idea what I did. Victoria thought I worked as a mid-level IT support tech. That was the lie of omission I had allowed my family to believe for years, mostly because explaining the truth to them would have immediately turned me into a human ATM. Here is the truth. When I was 22, playing around on those servers in the basement, I wrote a predictive logistics algorithm. It was designed to optimize global shipping routes by anticipating weather patterns and supply chain disruptions. I patented it. 2 years later, a massive multinational tech conglomerate bought the exclusive rights to it for $420 million. I didn't buy a yacht. I didn't buy a mansion. I took that money, created a blind trust, and began aggressively investing in commercial real estate under the entity CR Holdings. By 28, I was quietly one of the largest private property owners in the Midwest. I had a team of wealth managers, an ironclad non-disclosure agreement with everyone I worked with, and a life of absolute, unbothered freedom. My most recent acquisition was the venue for Victoria's precious gala, the Obsidian Plaza. It was a historic, sprawling Art Deco masterpiece in the heart of downtown Chicago that had fallen into disrepair. 6 months ago, CR Holdings purchased it out of bankruptcy for a staggering sum. We had spent the last half year gutted it, restored the gold leaf ceilings, installed state-of-the-art amenities, and prepared it for a massive public rebranding. The Harrington Foundation had booked the venue nearly a year ago, before my holding company bought it. The management team had honored the contract, of course. But what Victoria didn't know, what no one in Chicago high society knew yet, was that Saturday night wasn't just a charity gala. It was the official unveiling of the building's massive renovation. And at midnight, the grand neon sign at the top of the tower and the bronze plaques flanking the main entrance were going to be revealed. The building was no longer the Obsidian Plaza. I had renamed it. Saturday night arrived with a bitter chill in the air. While Victoria was likely hyperventilating in a bridal suite somewhere, screaming at caterers and adjusting her suffocating corset, I was in my penthouse across town, pouring a glass of vintage scotch. My personal PR director, Fiona Davies, walked into the living room holding a garment bag. Fiona was sharp, British, and fiercely protective of me. "The press is in position, Celia," Fiona said, unzipping the bag. "The mayor's office just confirmed his attendance, and the tarp covering the bronze dedication plaque is secure. Are you ready for this?" "More than you know," I replied. I slipped into the gown Fiona had commissioned for me. It wasn't a recognizable, flashy label that Victoria would obsess over. It was custom haute couture, a sweeping, structural masterpiece in deep emerald silk that moved like liquid glass, paired with my grandfather's antique gold pocket watch fashioned into a striking necklace, and my hair swept into an elegant, razor-sharp chignon. The reflection in the mirror was completely unrecognizable from the dowdy little sister Victoria knew. I didn't look like I was trying to fit in with old money. I looked like I owned the bank that held their debts. At 8:30 p.m., my chauffeur pulled my sleek, midnight black Maybach up to the curb of my building. The street was ablaze with flashing cameras, floodlights, and a velvet-roped red carpet leading up to the grand marble stairs. I waited in the back seat, watching the monitor on my phone. The live feed from the local news showed Victoria standing at the top of the stairs. She looked stunning, undeniably, in a white beaded gown, clinging tightly to Preston's arm. She was playing the role of the benevolent, wealthy philanthropist perfectly, laughing for the cameras, completely unaware that the ground beneath her heels belonged to me. "Drive up," I told my driver softly. The Maybach glided to the VIP drop-off zone, bypassing the line of idling limousines. The sudden appearance of the flagship vehicle immediately drew the attention of the paparazzi. Camera flashes erupted like lightning as my driver opened the door, and I stepped out. A hush actually fell over the immediate vicinity of the carpet. The emerald silk caught the floodlights, shimmering brilliantly against the cold Chicago night. I walked up the red carpet with slow, measured steps. I didn't stop for photos. I didn't look at the press. My eyes were locked dead ahead. I saw the exact moment Victoria spotted me. She was mid-laugh, saying something to the mayor's wife, when her eyes darted over the crowd and landed on me. The color instantly drained from her perfectly contoured face. Her jaw went slack. She let go of Preston's arm, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock, confusion, and then, as the realization of who I was set in pure, unadulterated rage, she excused herself hastily, practically shoving a wealthy socialite out of the way, and marched down the marble steps toward me, her heels clicking aggressively against the stone. She intercepted me just before I reached the grand glass doors of the vestibule. "What the hell are you doing here?" Victoria hissed, her voice trembling with fury, though she kept a terrifying plastic smile plastered on her face for the cameras snapping 50 feet away. "I'm attending an event, Victoria," I said calmly, not breaking my stride until she stepped directly into my path, physically blocking the doors. "I told you not to come," she whispered frantically, her eyes darting around to see if anyone was watching. "And whose dress is that? Did you rent it? Did you steal it? You look ridiculous playing dress-up. Preston's family is inside right now. You are not going to ruin this for me." "I think you're ruining it for yourself by causing a scene in the doorway," I replied, my voice dangerously low. "Listen to me, you pathetic little freak," Victoria snapped, the veneer of the elegant host completely dissolving. The desperation of her hidden bankruptcy was bleeding through. "This is my night. This is my building tonight. I am the chairwoman. You don't have a ticket. You don't have an invitation. And you sure as hell don't belong." She turned and snapped her fingers toward the massive, heavily built head of security standing just inside the glass doors. "Gareth!" she barked. The imposing man in the black suit stepped forward, pulling his earpiece out slightly. "Yes, Miss Caldwell?" Gareth asked, his deep voice rumbling. "This woman is trespassing," Victoria ordered, pointing a shaking, manicured finger directly at my chest. "She has been stalking my family. She doesn't have an invitation. I want her physically removed from the premises immediately. Throw her out onto the street if you have to." Victoria crossed her arms, a smug, triumphant smirk returning to her face as she waited for her command to be executed. She expected me to shrink. She expected me to cry and run away in humiliation, exactly as I had done when we were kids. Gareth looked at Victoria. Then, he slowly turned his head and looked at me. The silence stretched for 3 agonizing seconds. The cold wind whipped at Victoria's white dress. Gareth didn't reach for me. Instead, he straightened his posture, brought his hands to his sides, and offered me a sharp, respectful bow. "Good evening, Miss Caldwell," Gareth said, his voice echoing loudly over the murmur of the crowd. "The executive suite has been prepared for you, and the microphone in the grand ballroom is hot for your midnight address. Shall I escort you in, ma'am?" Victoria's jaw unhinged. She stared at Gareth, then at me, then back at Gareth, as if the massive security chief had suddenly started speaking in tongues. "Excuse me?" Victoria's voice cracked, losing every ounce of its polished, mid-Atlantic affectation. "What did you just say to her, Gareth? She's a nobody. She's my broke sister." "Miss Caldwell," Gareth replied, his tone chillingly polite but entirely devoid of the deference he usually reserved for the elite. "Miss Celia Caldwell is the primary shareholder of CR Holdings. She is the outright owner of this entire property. Now, please step aside so my boss may enter her building." Victoria looked like she had been physically struck. She stumbled back a half step, the heel of her designer shoe catching awkwardly on the marble threshold. For the first time in her life, she had absolutely no script. She looked frantically toward the flashing cameras at the bottom of the stairs, terrified they had caught this humiliating exchange, before dragging her horrified gaze back to me. "You?" she whispered, her face pale beneath her immaculate makeup. "C.R. Holdings? That's impossible. You fix computers. You wear hand-me-downs." "I build logistics algorithms, Victoria," I corrected her gently, stepping past her frozen form. "And I don't wear hand-me-downs anymore. Enjoy your evening. Don't worry about the rental fee for the ballroom. Consider it my philanthropic contribution to your little charity." I left her hyperventilating in the vestibule and swept into the grand foyer. The Obsidian Plaza was a masterpiece. My architectural team had painstakingly restored the 1920s gold leaf detailing on the vaulted ceilings and imported black marble from Italy for the floors. A string quartet was playing a classical rendition of a modern pop song in the corner, and the room was packed with Chicago's most influential power players. Fiona, my PR director, appeared seamlessly at my elbow, handing me a crystal flute of champagne. Flawless entry, Celia. The Harrington family is holding court near the ice sculpture. Richard Harrington has been asking the venue management all night who bought this building. He's itching for an introduction. Let's make him wait, I murmured, taking a sip. I spent the next 2 hours casually mingling. I didn't have to introduce myself. The dress, the antique gold watch, and the sheer confidence radiating from my posture did the heavy lifting. Whispers followed me like a physical wake. Who is she? Is she European royalty? Who made that gown? Eventually, I found myself standing near the silent auction tables, examining a rather hideous abstract painting, when I heard the familiar, arrogant drawl of Preston Harrington. Well, well. I have to admit, I didn't think they let the bridge and tunnel crowd pass the velvet ropes tonight. Preston sneered. I turned around. Preston was standing there with his parents, Richard and Beatrice Harrington. Richard was a formidable, gray-haired banking magnate who looked like he chewed cigars for breakfast. Beatrice was dripping in diamonds that had likely been in their family since the Industrial Revolution. Victoria was clutching Preston's arm, looking absolutely nauseous. She had clearly not told them about our encounter at the door. Preston, I said coolly. A pleasure as always. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, I don't believe we've had the pleasure of a formal introduction. I'm Celia, Victoria's younger sister. Beatrice Harrington's eyebrows shot up into her hairline. She looked at Victoria, then at me, clearly struggling to reconcile the tragically poor sister narrative. Victoria had undoubtedly fed them with the woman standing before her in $500,000 worth of emerald silk. Victoria's sister? Richard rumbled, his shrewd eyes narrowing as he evaluated me. Victoria told us you were indisposed. Something about clerical work keeping you tied up in the suburbs? Oh, Victoria has always had a rather creative imagination, I smiled, locking eyes with my sister. She looked like she wanted the imported marble floor to open up and swallow her whole. I work in commercial real estate and tech logistics, actually. The city keeps me quite busy. Real estate? Richard perked up, his business instincts overriding his snobbery. Fascinating. Our firm has been trying to track down the buyer of this very building. A shell corporation, CR, Holdings. Absolutely brilliant acquisition. Whoever is running that fund is a shark. Do you happen to know them in your circles, Celia? Victoria squeezed Preston's arm so hard he actually winced. Richard, darling, we should really go check on the caterers. Actually, Richard, I interrupted, my voice smooth and loud enough to draw the attention of the surrounding guests. I know the CEO of CR Holdings very well. Richard stepped closer, practically salivating at the prospect of an inside track to a billionaire investor. Is that so? Would you be willing to facilitate an introduction? I don't see why not, I smiled, swirling my champagne. You're speaking to her. The silence that fell over the Harrington family was absolute. Preston's smug smirk vanished, replaced by a look of profound, idiotic confusion. Beatrice actually gasped, bringing a hand to her diamond necklace. You? Richard barked, a mixture of shock and newfound respect washing over his face. You bought the obsidian? Good God, woman, you outbid 3 international conglomerates. I like to keep my investments close to home, I said sweetly. Victoria, Preston stammered, turning to his fiancée. Did you know about this? Victoria couldn't speak. She was trembling, trapped in a nightmare of her own making. The illusion of her superiority had just been shattered into a million irreparable pieces in front of the very people she worshipped. Before Preston could demand more answers, the grand ballroom's lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the main stage at the front of the room. It was 11:55 p.m. Excuse me, I said, setting my empty champagne flute on a passing waiter's tray. I believe they're calling for me. I walked toward the stage as the mayor of Chicago stepped up to the microphone. The room fell into an expectant hush. Ladies and gentlemen, the mayor boomed, his voice echoing off the gold leaf ceilings. Tonight, we are here to celebrate the incredible charitable efforts of the Harrington Foundation, but we are also here to celebrate the rebirth of a Chicago landmark. For months, the city has wondered who saved this historic masterpiece from the wrecking ball. Tonight, the visionary behind this restoration has graciously agreed to reveal herself. The mayor extended his hand toward the steps of the stage. Please welcome the CEO of CR Holdings and the owner of this magnificent property, Miss Celia Caldwell. A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd, quickly replaced by thunderous applause. I walked up the steps, my emerald gown trailing behind me like liquid luxury. I shook the mayor's hand and stepped up to the acrylic podium. Looking out over the sea of faces, I found Victoria instantly. She was standing exactly where I had left her, flanked by the Harringtons. She looked small, shrunken. "Good evening," I said into the microphone. When my firm purchased this building out of bankruptcy, it was a hollow shell. It had a beautiful facade, but the foundation was rotting, and the debts attached to it were insurmountable. It reminded me a lot of certain people in high society, beautiful on the outside, but entirely bankrupt on the inside. I saw Richard Harrington's head snap toward Victoria at the word bankrupt. The man wasn't stupid. He was a banker. He smelled blood in the water. "My father passed away recently," I continued, my voice steady. "He spent his entire life trying to buy his way into a world that only values you for what you can provide. He died with nothing because he gave it all away to maintain an illusion. I operate differently. I build things that last." I reached over and touched a velvet rope positioned next to the podium. "At midnight tonight, the neon sign atop this skyscraper and the bronze plaques at every entrance will be unveiled. This building is no longer the Obsidian Plaza. It is a monument to the only man in my family who taught me the value of hard work, quiet intelligence, and genuine loyalty." I pulled the rope. On the massive screens behind me, a live feed showed the heavy canvas dropping from the front of the building outside. In gleaming, massive bronze lettering, the new name of the building was revealed: the Winston Caldwell Center. Named after my grandfather, I announced to the cheering crowd, "Thank you all for coming to my building tonight. Please, enjoy the rest of your evening." I walked off the stage to a standing ovation. Wealthy socialites, tech executives, and politicians immediately swarmed me, desperate to network with the elusive billionaire they hadn't realized was living right under their noses. I played the game flawlessly, shaking hands and exchanging business cards for about 20 minutes before I finally made my way toward the exit. As I approached the coat check, I heard frantic, hushed, yelling from a secluded alcove near the restrooms. It was Victoria and Preston. "You lied to us," Preston was hissing, his face red with fury. "Preston, please, it's not a big deal," Victoria pleaded, tears finally streaming down her perfectly contoured face. "My father had some debts, yes, but the house. I just got off the phone with my family's estate lawyer." Richard Harrington's voice boomed from the shadows of the alcove as he stepped into view. He looked at Victoria with absolute disgust. "Your father didn't just have some debts, Victoria. His estate is completely insolvent. You are foreclosing on your house next week. You don't have a dime to your name." "Richard, I love Preston," Victoria sobbed, reaching for her fiancé. Preston violently yanked his arm away, as if her sudden poverty was contagious. "Are you insane? You expected my family to pay off your father's millions in hidden debt while you paraded around playing the wealthy socialite? The wedding is off, Victoria. My mother is already contacting the caterers to cancel." "Preston, you can't," she shrieked. "I planned this entire gala for you, for your family's foundation." "Yes, about that," Richard said coldly. "Since you are the chairwoman of this specific event, and you failed to disclose your financial ruin, the foundation will not be covering the incidental overages for tonight's catering and security. You signed the vendor contracts personally, Victoria. Good luck paying them." The Harringtons turned in unison and walked away, leaving Victoria weeping alone in the dark alcove. Her grand plan, her golden ticket, her entire fabricated life gone in an instant. I stood there for a moment, watching her cry. A small part of me, the little girl who used to hide in the basement to escape her cruel taunts, felt a twinge of pity. But then I remembered the $100 bill she had thrown at me like I was a beggar, and the way she had ordered Gareth to throw me into the street. I stepped into the alcove. Victoria snapped her head up, her eyes red and mascara running down her cheeks. "Are you happy now?" she choked out, venom lacing her tears. "You ruined my life. You took everything from me." "I didn't take anything from you, Victoria," I said calmly, adjusting the emerald silk shawl over my shoulders. "You built a house of glass, and you spent your whole life throwing stones at me. I just finally decided to stop catching them." I turned my back on her and walked out the grand glass doors. Gareth tipped his hat to me as I passed. My Maybach was waiting at the curb, the engine purring softly in the cold Chicago night. I climbed into the back seat, poured myself another glass of vintage scotch, and looked up through the tinted window at the glowing neon sign at the top of the skyscraper. The Winston Caldwell Center. I smiled, took a sip, and told my driver to take me home. Have you ever had a toxic family member try to step all over you, only to realize you held all the cards the entire time? Let me know in the comments below how you handled your own real-life karma moments. If you loved this story of ultimate revenge and high society drama, smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more crazy, true story tea. See you in the next one.